Well, was Sven unlucky to be dismissed at Man City? Did Mick McCarthy survive on borrowed time at Sunderland? Certainly Steve Bruce didn't. It's interesting, isn't it? Because what about the way that football managers are chosen and how they survive? Researchers from the ICMA Centre at the University of Reading have developed a model that could give directors of football clubs vital data when deciding on their manager's future. Here's one then for Sir John Medeski if you need to think about Brian McDermott. Everything is fine, I'm sure. The model conceived by a team from the Henley Business School crucially evaluates a manager's performance on their genuine ability to get the best out of the team. It could be a great way of choosing the perfect manager for your club. The research team comprises of 3 people, including Tom Markham, who is a researcher of football finance at the University of Reading. Hello there, Tom.
Good afternoon.
How long has this research taken then? I imagine you've had to sort of do a little bit of research and crunch the numbers.
Well, definitely, it's taken quite a while. We looked at a 5-season sample periods between 2004, 2005 and 2008, 2009. So, and it's done on a match-by-match basis, so it did take quite a bit of time to put that together.
So how does it work? I mean, how do you evaluate a manager's performance? I mean, we know, obviously, probably the most successful manager is Sir Alex Ferguson. That one's a given almost, isn't it?
Definitely. So what we did, we built an econometric model, and it effectively separates statistical factors that are deemed beyond the control of a manager. So things like that the directors might decide, transfer fee spending, player wages, and then we look at sort of other factors, on-field factors such as player injuries, suspensions or unavailability, and we effectively strip all of that out and you're left with a manager's genuine ability.
I mean, and you've also got to surely factor in the owners of the club. For example, many clubs wouldn't be that unhappy with making it to, say, for example, I'm a Chelsea fan, making it to the European Cup final, sadly losing to Manchester United on a penalty shootout, yet the manager got sacked. I mean, other clubs will put up with a losing streak. Blackburn, for example, right now, Steve Keane at the moment, if it was Roman Abramovich, you would have gone months ago.
Very valid point, and obviously that's reflected in the expenditure element of things. Just to the example that you cited to do with Steve Bruce being sacked at Sunderland, just before I came on air, I was having a quick look at the 2 major candidates, Martin O'Neill and Mark Hughes, and the way the model works, it's quite simple. We generate a percentage for each manager so you can compare them, and Steve Bruce's percentage for the sample period we were looking at was just over 17%, which means that 17% of managers are performing better than Steve Bruce. But if we look at Martin O'Neill and Mark Hughes, they're very, very close. And actually Sunderland have gone for the right one based on our research. Only 0.02% of managers have performed better than Martin O'Neill.
Wow, so they have made the right choice. If they'd used your model, they made the right choice. Have you done one on Brian, by the way, at Reading?
We haven't. The research, as you said, with data collection and the constraints of that, we've only looked at the Premier League so far, but I'm hoping to further the catchment area and look at the Championship. But as a regular down at the Medeski, I have to say Brian's doing a very good job, and particularly considering that their resources are quite limited because they're not receiving the parachute payments from the Premier League anymore.
Yes, I imagine Man City may have made the right choice. By the way, has Roman Abramovich made the right choice?
Well, it's funny that you say that, and obviously as a Chelsea fan, it's been quite an indifferent start for Andre Villas-Boas, but he mentioned in one of his press conferences the other day, and actually this is the major rationale behind our research, because it can be very, very expensive to replace a manager and obviously replace his whole team. So a quick toss, obviously Chelsea paid, I think it was 13 million in compensation to Porto to get Villas-Boas out of his contract, and if they were to sack him tomorrow, they'd have to pay him 20 million in compensation. So with the backroom team and everyone else been removed, that could be 35 million pounds and you're back to square one. So that might be okay for someone like Abramovich, a bit of pocket change, but that's half the budget for some of the smaller teams in the Premier League, the likes of Wigan, etc.
That's incredible. And just a final couple of quick questions. One, I've got to mention, was a manager who always does well wherever he is. I mean, he turned Portsmouth around within no time and saved them, and he's doing wonders at Tottenham, and that's Harry Redknapp.
Yeah, and you're dead right. And just to have a quick look at how Harry Redknapp's been performing, he is 0.13%. So obviously that means that basically a tiny proportion of managers over the sample period that we looked at performed better than him. And as you said, it's quite remarkable because he was at 3 different clubs over that period, and not quite glamorous clubs as well. So the resources might have been tight, and that was in around the time, obviously, that Portsmouth won the FA Cup as well, which was a major coup for a club of that size.
All right, well, good to speak to you. Sadly, we run out of time, and but if nothing else, any club owners listening right now, this is the perfect model for you. Tom, have a good evening. Take it out. Bye-bye.
BBC Radio Berkshire with Phil Kennedy.